Krux trucks. I've been getting requests for these basically since I started the channel, and I'm finally going to get onto a pair. So these are the K4s. They are 8.5 inches wide, 55 millimeters tall, which is the same as an Indy. And when I weighed them, they weighed 370, which is actually the same as a Thunder 149. So these are considerably lighter than Indies. And they're missing a lot of material in little spots. So they've even taken material off there. The base plate is shaved down there. There's a very slight camber to the hanger, just a very slight one. And then of course they've got the trademark thing missing out of there, which kind of trips me out sometimes, because sometimes I'll look down at my board and I'm like, why can I see my kingpin and bushing? Or I'll look down at it and I can say, why can I see the ground through my truck? So it's kind of a weird thing. The wheelbase on Krux is about 2 millimeters smaller than Indy, roughly, or it might be exactly the same. Anyways, it's close enough to an Indy to say that. So they're like the same height, they have the same setback from the nose and tail as Indies, but they are a very different truck. So I've been playing around on them for a couple of days, and I've had them on this full shape program deck, 8 1/4. I've got some big old 54 millimeter lock-ins on them. And so far today, I've just been playing around, doing some basic tricks. So let's start out with a positive. I actually like the way they manual. They have a pretty decent manual feeling. Like I can really find the zone and adjust a little bit and just kind of lock right in there. So that's good. For flip tricks, they are adequate. I mean, it's a bigger truck, so I always struggle a little bit, but I can do it. So now let's get on to the biggest con I can find so far about these trucks, and that is they don't turn. And it's funny because I was reading on Slap to try and get some more insight into these, and one camp of skaters is like, oh, the Krux bushings are the best and the Krux have a great turn, they're awesome. And then I saw a few reviews with people having experiences like me, which is they don't turn. It doesn't matter how loose I have them, not about breaking in. Like, this is my 3rd or 4th session on these, and these should be skating pretty decently by now. And here's the thing, I have them loose, like they're wiggly loose, which is looser than I like my trucks, and I still can't turn enough. So I'm gonna do a little demonstration. I've got my cruiser set up with Indy 149s and 54 millimeter wheels. I've got this, which again is 8.5 inch wide trucks and 54 millimeter wheels, and I got a piece of chalk. So I'm going to try as carefully as I can, carve and mark the ground and see if I can show how poorly these turn. So the idea here is I'm gonna follow the line of this, and right at the end I'm gonna arc off and I'm gonna try and have this chalk at my wheel. Now I realize there is a lot of room for error, but I am gonna do my best. I've got both my trucks loosened right up, and I'm gonna try and carve as deep as I can without getting wheel bite. Let's start out on the Indies. Nice turny truck. So it's tricky. I actually couldn't max out the turn. I had to gradually lean in, but let's try the Krux. Terribly unscientific. Let's go a little slower with Indies and see how hard I can carve them. Okay, I got a really tight one on the last one with Indies. Let's see if I can match that on the Krux. So you can see they're all pretty much the same. Here's my first Indy, which is pretty broad, and then it all of a sudden arcs around. Here's my next Krux. It's pretty even, but then you can see it can't match as soon as I really start to carve on Indies. Here's some more Krux. And then this tightest one here, this is my Indy when I really maxed it out. And then none of my Krux ones could even come close. There's the one I bailed on. So we're gonna have to try this one more time. I'm gonna follow the line of this pyramid now. And what I'm noticing is when I go slow, I have more control and I'm still riding. actually getting a pretty close carve on both. Back to the Indies one last time to see if I can get the deepest carve possible. I'm out of chalk, and I don't think I can actually max it out any more than that. I want to note, I realize there is so much room for error in this, which is part of why I tried to do it so many times, but let's take a quick look and understand that on this last one, as I was going slower, I was maxing the trucks out. So I was actually getting wheel bite, and Indies turned so tight that I actually couldn't hang on if I maxed them out. I could only really max out the Indies gradually, whereas the Krux, I just hit, get wheel bite, and I'm done. Let's take one last look at the new ones. Again, there's so much room for error depending on where I have my foot, but these closer ones are the Indies. And that's where I maxed out and got wheel bite. And these ones on the Krux, I could kind of feel wheel bite creeping the whole time. So it's hard to tell, but the inner ones are Indies. More wax. Today I want to test them out on some transition. Okay, so that was a fun little session, but a strange thing is happening, and I can't actually tell if these trucks are starting to break in or if I'm just getting used to them not turning. So enough about that. How did they skate in transition? They were adequate. For starters, they're the same height as Indies, but they're 149, so 8.5 inch wide. As soon as I get to that height and that width, I feel quite stable at 55mm high axle height. So they felt good in that regard. Like, I was able to lock in easily on my backside 50/50s. Whenever I'm on a 55mm tall truck on an 8-inch board, I'm tippy. I don't feel stable. But this ratio works really well. So in terms of handling the curves and carving around in this thing, there was a few times where I was not able to turn deep enough and I had to like tic-tac here and there. And when I'm skating a bowl, the idea is, unless I'm doing a lip trick, I want all 4 wheels on the concrete. So I should never be having to do a tic-tac or anything in any of my turns. Like, if I do that, I'm not operating in the bowl properly. So I gotta have all 4 wheels down, and there was a few times I had to tic-tac in those sharp corners. The other thing I don't like is because in order to get even a halfway decent turn out of them, I have to have them looser than I like. So it's a weird combination of the truck is too loose for me to feel comfortable, yet too tight to get a deep carve. So I found that fairly unpleasant. Like, I can get my Indies to get a much deeper carve while the truck is tighter. So it's a little bit annoying, like it feels a bit shaky and wobbly and then still doesn't go as far as I need it to. But as you can see, I still had fun skating, right? You know, stick it out for a little bit longer. So I've done a lot of talking about the turning on these. Now let's get into the grinding a little bit. So I'm gonna do some crooked grinds, some Smith grinds, and just see how I generally like them. Alright, so testing out pinch for crooked grinds on this ledge is kind of pointless because I haven't found a truck or a setup that can't crooked grind this ledge yet. It locks in so perfectly. So in a bit we'll go to a crunchy old concrete ledge. So the kingpin clearance was actually quite good. Like when I'm looking down this, I have probably 3/16, like almost a 1/4 inch of kingpin clearance. So I was dipping those down as far as I could. It was really well waxed though, so it's going on a layer of wax, but I was able to clear on my kingpins quite nicely. So that's good. Alright, so pinch and legibility is fine. It works. I also tried feeble grinds on it the other day. It was neither noteworthy, like neither really awesome like Thunders where you're just like sitting locked on and riding. And it wasn't like Indies where you're taller and have to lean back more. It was just sort of in between, grindable. Now in terms of the metal hardness, I would say the metal feels a bit harder than other trucks. So that leads to, when a ledge is not waxed enough, leads it to not grinding well. Like I stick a lot. So on a really grindy, smooth ledge that's well worked in, they grind just fine. But whenever I've been on something a little crustier, a little bit harder, I have to push more. So slightly less predictable grind, harder metal. So this is turning into a long truck review. Now, I took them off, I put on my Indies because I needed a point of reference to see how these felt. I know how my Indies feel. But I have these big wheels and I've got this full shaped deck with a very long wheelbase relative to the length, basically a super steep nose and tail. So I really couldn't tell what the pop feel was of the Krux. Anyways, the pop feel of the Krux is fairly similar to Indies, as in it makes the front of the nose feel kind of light when you ollie. Like if you've got Thunder on one end and Indie on the other end, these are like 75% towards Indies. So to summarize these trucks, here's the deal breakers for me. The turning, the fact that they feel a tiny bit rattly and cheap, the same way the Royals felt a bit rattly. And also, once I got back on my Indies, I did notice I was going faster again. So I'm turning smoother and I'm rolling faster. So somehow these are absorbing speed. Now, let's look at the positives of these trucks. They are considerably lighter than Indies, at least I felt like it. I could manage this big board technically better on these Krux than I can on these Indy 149s. So in spite of the fact that I'm turning better and popping easier and going a bit faster, I could still actually do my tricks a bit better on these. However, if you want that benefit, just go with some Thunder lights or get Indy lights, because these are the standard Indy 149s. Now, to play devil's advocate and talk about the turning thing in a positive light, so apparently Rodney designed tensor trucks to have a lot of lean in them without a lot of turn. Say when you land a trick and you want to be able to sort of adjust like this on your heel or on your toe without turning a whole bunch, well, you can do that on these trucks because they lean a lot before they turn, as opposed to an Ace which turns really tight as it leans. So what I can safely say about that is they may not turn a lot, but they are going to feel stable, especially if you have them tightened down quite a bit. So the two positives I can come up with are stable and light. So that was probably more information than anybody can absorb in one sitting watching a video, but I want to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. If I was gonna have a slogan for these trucks, the slogan would be Krux trucks. They're skatable. I'll take it.